Hello everyone and welcome back to another Getting Stuff Painted by bi-weekly or maybe monthly at this point update on the things that have been getting painted for the miniature games we cover here on the channel. It's been a little while and this will probably be the last update for the year. I can't imagine I'll be doing much painting between now and the start of 2023. So yeah, this will probably be the last Getting Stuff Painted of the year. The camera is pulled very far back in order to fit into frame the first things we'll be talking about, which is the Sentinels from Marvel Crisis Protocol. But we also have some Modiphius entertainment in the form of both their games that I've covered on the channel. And then a little random thing on the end just because I was struck with sudden motivation. We've got some DC Universe from Night Models, specifically the first wave of Red Lanterns for that game. And we'll probably try and be quite brief because it is freezing in here. We're just trying to get this done very quickly before we all freeze to death up in here in minus 10 degrees Celsius weather. So with that said, one ball throw later, we'll start talking about the Sentinels. So specifically here we have two MK4 Sentinels, and then we have their big boss at the back, the Prime. If I had any regrets with the way I assembled them, I accidentally made the Prime and this one basically the same pose. Not quite the same pose, their fists are a bit different angle of the hand, but they're not different enough. I should have made this one point the other way. They are quite modular, but only from the upper body up. When you assemble them, their legs have to be the same. You can't really customize them, you can't make them pose any differently. You can just turn the ball joint on their chest means you can turn it whichever way you want. They got ball joints on the arms, you can turn those however you want. And your choices for arms are basically like bent at the elbow or straight. And then there's like three fist options, either like fully closed, semi-closed, firing, or pointing. That's your choices. More customization than Crisis Protocol usually gives, but not super huge amounts. It is a shame, but I understand why they did that because they have to plan for the base sizes you're given. So I'll talk about all three of them in general. All the same contrast paints were used for all of them. Contrast paint on large models is never that great of an effect because of how streaky it looks. If ever I was wanting to touch these up in the future, if I had a very similar colour of normal paint, it would just be a case of going over them. And then I think it would actually look pretty good, but it's the tedium required in doing that that's escaping right now. So I think this was the very first one I did, so let's look at this one. And I tried my best to match the colours to the official paint jobs. If you wanted to match them closer to the character cards and also the old 90s cartoon, I probably wouldn't go with a purple. I would go with like a burgundy. Actually, the new, is it called Sigvald Burgundy contrast paint is probably like perfect if you wanted to do that kind of tone. But I wanted to match up the official paint job in terms of just colours used, so I went with the purple they did, which is also canonical depending on the source you look for the Sentinels. So this was one of the new purple contrast paints. It was I think it's the Luxian purple it's called. Whichever one of the two new purples they added to the line is the brighter of the two. That is the one I used here, and it's Asherman blue for the blue parts, just Leadbelcher silver for the silver parts, and then a mixture of a Yandin yellow and Imperial Fist yellow for the glowy yellow parts, including the glow on the hand, which is hopefully in focus right there, to show that they're like firing a blast or restraint cables or whatever. I've forgotten what red I used for the eyes. It doesn't really matter which red you use as long as you use red. And I did use neon oil over the top just to make, because they're grimy machines, they're not supposed to look super clean. So I don't mind the way it turned out in terms of like some of the 40k stuff I tried back in the day with contrast paint that was very large and flat surfaces. It came out worse for sure. I did do some double layering in certain places to try and make it look less streaky. It helped a little bit, I think. Oh yeah, and for the bases it's just Gryph-hound Orange and Basilicanum Grey with some Storm Vermin fur on top to make it look less streaky as well. Which is the same effect you would get if I then like picked out a blue and did that over the blue parts of these Sentinels, or the purple and did it over the purple parts. But at that point you're kind of taking away the advantage of how quick contrast paint is, and you might as well just paint normally. But that is something you can definitely do. It's a good base contrast paint, which I think is also why Games Workshop scale their videos like, here's how you get your models battle ready, and it's basically just slap contrast paint on like I do. And then they do, here's how you get your models parade ready, where they take the model that has been contrast painted and they build up layers on it and edge highlight and dry brush and all that stuff that adds a little bit more to it. So not 100% happy with how these turned out, but in the future, if I felt like it, it wouldn't be too hard to make them look a little bit better. It's just a case of finding a good purple and or blue that's just slightly lighter and or darker, depending on which way you want to go, than the colours used. And from the distance we're talking about, like this distance or further away, I don't think the streakiness is actually that bad. Probably the worst for it would be the Prime, because the Prime is the largest of the three. He's the tallest miniature available for the game. He is much bigger than those two and or Mamu. He's also the most effective of them. I actually think they're kind of bad, but the Prime is really good on the table. It's a shame because they're all so imposing and fantastic looking, but they don't live up to their bang for their buck necessarily, at least in the couple of tries I've had with them. But the models themselves are great. I'm a fan of the 90s cartoon, so this is the iconic look of the Sentinels for me. I remember them being the antagonists in the cartoon a lot. Happy to have got them done, and they were a large project through kind of the end of October into November there, and we'll definitely see them on the table again sometime, but not sure when. But anyway, at least they're done. That was the three biggest things that took up the most of the time since this update and the last one for sure. The rest of what we're going to talk about today, not so much. Right, I've moved in a little bit closer for the other miniatures now that we've talked about the Sentinels. One quick and just cheerful by themselves miniature to talk about from Fallout Wasteland Warfare by Modiphius Entertainment. It is a T45 power armor, one of a box of 3 that you can get, and this is basically so that I can actually have a T45 power armor to represent the T45 power armor in the settlement mode, because right now I've been using other armors just because I didn't have the box. Found it quite cheap over the I think it was in the tail end of the summer sales. Oh, my dog is crying for attention. So this is just one of the 3. I picked this pose because it was the most basic in terms of weaponry. I think that's just the plasma rifle they're holding. One of them's got a minigun and one of them's got a shish kebab, the like heat sword from the game, neither of which match up with what I'm doing in settlement mode. So this one just having kind of like a generic rifle that you can pass off as a laser rifle or whatever else, that seemed like the most important one to get done first, and this is going to be properly used to represent the armor it's meant to when Season 3 kicks off, which should be in January, probably the tail end of January, just with how slow things are at the moment. But it will be coming back, and I'm hoping to have more models done by then as well, just to improve enemy variety. And since the dog is now just cowering, I guess you heard something that bothered her. I'm not getting balls dropped on my feet. We can talk about the other Modiphius game, which is the Elder Scrolls game called to Arms. So we have the last model from the box I talked about last time, which is hopefully just now in focus. So this is the Bard. She has a name, I don't remember what it is, but she does have a unique stat card as a result. She's not just like generic Bard. But the colours used, oh, I didn't go over the colours used there because I've talked about power armor before. It's literally what I've done for all of them. So here I used, I think this is Striking Scorpion Green, one of the newer contrast paints, for her cloak to try and match up to the official colours, with some Nazdrag Yellow for the gold trim. That is Skeletal Horde for her messy dress. I hope the dog isn't about to bark. She's looking like she's thinking about it. And some Wildwood for her like fur cloak, Yandin Yellow for her hair, and Gulaman Flesh for her skin tone. She's got a textured base which almost looks like it's 3D printed, but that is just how it comes. I know it's meant to have that pattern on it, but you can kind of see inner lines that look like, you know, a fairly cheap 3D print. But that's just Basilicanum Grey with a non-oil wash over the top, and I think she had Aggressor Shade put on for a little bit of texture as well. Not much to say about her, but that is that box now entirely done. And as a result, I was able to move on to other things from Call to Arms, specifically the Dwemer Spheres, which we have here to look at. And the other part of the box is Dwemer Spiders, so you get 3 of them. Very annoying to put together, those were. I struggled with them a little bit, and they're going to be a bit more annoying to paint because they're so close to the ground, and they actually come with very, very detailed bases. The spheres not so much, because their primary goal is to roll and bounce and generally just be irritating anytime you go into a Dwarven ruin. Also apparently just fighting autofocus as painfully as possible and refusing to come into focus no matter what. Okay, there we go. Part of the reason I went to this box is, well, I picked it up cheap quite a while ago, but just because it'd be super simple to do with contrast paint. If you're not too worried about it, it's a case of just basing it in Grey Seer, adding Nazdrag Yellow to everything, and then adding non-oil to show the age a little bit. Now, obviously there is more you could do if you wanted to add more detail. If you wanted them to look closer to the game, you'd probably want to use one of the other gold paints, a bit darker gold rather than the Nazdrag Yellow, but I wanted to do them quick, and I think this effect works well enough for them. And the bases just have, I think I used the Sigwald Burgundy for the carpet actually, I think I did. And Basilicum Grey for the stone, and then just a normal black paint for the rim. And then that's the pose they take when they're moving kind of into position in the video game. This one, I didn't copy the like you're kind of free to pose them however you want. I didn't copy the box poses because I didn't like the way they were like stanced. I don't know if that's a past tense word, but the way they looked, didn't like it. So I made this one kind of look like he's firing his crossbow because they come with a sword and a crossbow. Again, exactly the same paint job for this one as well though. So that's, you only get 2 of them. They do sell the big Centurion in a separate box. I think it comes with 2 ballistae. I'm not sure what the plural ballista is. But yeah, I haven't got that box, but I do have the spiders. I'll probably try and get them done, but as I say, they're going to be much more of a pain. Kind of similar to a few of the Wasteland Warfare critters that are very low to the ground with detailed bases. Hard to work with, but they're worth it in the long run, I hope. So with that, one ball throw next, and then we'll be back. So last but not least this time, from the DC Universe miniature game by Night Models, we have the first wave of Red Lanterns. Since then they've had a second wave, a new Atrocitus, which is kind of like their leader, with a Red Lantern Supergirl, and a Red Lantern version of Guy Gardner, who's also a Green Lantern available, miniature available for the game. This is the one I painted first, the man who has a ball. I think his name is Zilius Zox. I don't really know anything about the Red Lanterns, it's just I looked at my backlog of miniatures and I was like, oh yeah, hang on a second, I have the Red Lanterns to paint, why haven't I done that yet? So I started with this guy, and I honestly think he's the one who turned out best. I guess maybe because I was taking my time more or testing the waters. This is 3 different red contrast paints. I used all the paints for all of them. Bal Red for the costumes. I used Blood Angels Red for the blood rivers that they're all standing next to. And then for the blood dripping from his mouth, I used Flesh Terror Red. And Volupus Pink for the inside of his mouth. It's just Gilman Flesh for his skin tone and a little bit of yellow. They all seem to have yellow eyes. I'm not sure if that's like a Red Lantern thing, but they all seem to have yellow eyes, at least in the official paint jobs. And that is just Black Legion contrast paint applied kind of thickly over 2 layers for the like spandex suit they're wearing. I won't say what, like, I didn't know anything about the Red Lanterns, so when I posted this on Twitter a little while back, someone showed me a comic panel where Guy Gardner is insulting this guy, comparing him to something, keeping this family friendly, so I'm not going to repeat it, but it was quite funny and very, very true. But yeah, I think he's definitely the funnest miniature. The only Red Lantern I was familiar with besides Atrocitus, who isn't here, is Dexstar, the murder cat, which is great. So he is also part of this set. He is a cat with a Red Lantern ring. He is a good kitty because he kills. And very small, very finicky. Also very finicky for getting in focus. Still, maybe, kinda. I knew this one would have a problem. But I think that's as good as we're going to get, unfortunately. I don't think it's fully in focus. Exactly the same colours used for him, with the exception of his skin tone being Space Wolves Grey. I'm not quite sure why he's kind of a pale greyish blue. He is in the official paint job, so that's just what I'm copying. Same with that lady's skin tone, whose name I do not know. I used that for her as well, just again to try and match it up a little bit, and skeletal horde for all the skulls they're standing on. The official paint job had like these skulls all be kind of like ashen and blackened. I didn't like that, so I decided to do the more traditional skull tone, but maybe if they're on like a Red Lantern planet it's meant to be like that. As I say, I'm not familiar with them, so if I've done that wrong, that's fair enough. But I think it's more, they stand out more if you paint them actually as skull colours. So that's the order I painted them in so far. I did him, then the cat, then Bullman. Kind of did these 2 at the same time actually, but then whoever this is, the Bullman. He's kind of like the most basic. I feel like he would have been the easiest to start with. He's also having problems with the autofocus, huh? There we go. So again, same colours. For skin tone I used Snakebite Leather, again trying to match up to the official paint job. The only difference is I painted the skull colour instead of black. But yeah, interesting colour scheme. He's definitely the easiest pose to paint as well. They're all kind of similar stat wise, which is a bit weird. I thought they'd do something more interesting with them, but they're all pretty much like 14 or 15 levels each, and they all have basically the same stat lines. They're not as unique as the new Green Lantern releases feel, or the Yellow Lanterns, who are very different if you bring the whole set of them. So I think this lady's a fallen angel. I remember looking into it when this pack first got revealed, but I do not remember their names, sorry. But she's got pretty cool like bone wings at the back of her there. Her costume's a little bit more I was made in the 80s and drawn by a man kind of vibe, if you know what I mean. And she's got the most blood river on her base as well, because her base is larger. And the wings are hanging on by a thread. I would not be surprised if they just randomly fall off at some point. But that's okay. They're pretty weighty. I deliberately made them stick together here so there was an extra anchor point. They're not meant to be like that, but I figured just do it to stop them falling off. I think it's holding them together a little bit better. And I used Snape Space Wolf's Grey, that's the word I'm looking for her skin tone, as I said earlier. But yeah, I think she's meant to have like a lower mask, but I didn't want to try and touch it when I did that with it, and I was like, you know, that's good enough. That's good enough for this kind of distance away. As I'm sure you can hear, my dog is getting very impatient and cry and whiny because I've been ignoring her and not doing as many cuts to throw balls for her. How many do I have sitting here? I only have 2. It was 3 in the last cut. Hang on. There we go, in case you want proof. The third one is somewhere. So with that said, I think we're going to have to wrap things up here. This will probably be, as I said, the last getting stuff painted update for the year. We'll be back in January with one. Expect unboxings between then and now of a Black Friday order of miniatures I picked up. So I'll be working on a lot of Batman stuff over Christmas and New Year for sure, but you'll see that stuff in an unboxing video long before it's painted. Some more Fallout stuff, some more Elder Scrolls. I've still got some Call to Arm boxes here to work through after I get through the Dreamer stuff. And I do want to paint up those other T45 armors just in case I need them. They came in the box with that one there. Crisis Protocol, I'm not so sure. I'll probably try and pick up the Blob and Pyro releases at some point, but I'm not rushing now to get them. That's the only release they're doing between now and January as far as I'm aware. But I'm not too fussed about that one, either way or other. Anyway, if you want to show me who you've been painting, feel free to do so on Twitter. It's linked in the description box below, and just on the channel in general. I don't mind seeing it, even if it's a game I don't play. And I hope this inspires you to get through your painting this holiday season when it is very cold in the UK at least, and very hard to keep the heating on. So just lock yourself in a room, put a blanket over your shoulders, and just paint. Just stay indoors and paint. It's fine. With a cup of coffee or a cup of tea next to you. That's probably what I'm going to be doing right after I finish editing this. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Have a good Christmas, have a happy New Year, and I'll see you next year. With that said, ta-da for now.